Hello and welcome to the PDE Accelerated Learning online series. This session is in the Design a System of Scaffolded Supports, where we will focus on class-wide intervention. As we think about key components of class-wide intervention, class-wide intervention is an efficient, effective, and equitable way to provide support for an entire class of students when the majority of those students have a gap in their learning. As we'll talk about shortly, we can determine this by looking at the median score for a student in a class. Class-wide intervention is put into place during core instruction when the entire class, or 50% or more of students, are struggling with a specific skill. So we can think about it this way. If there is a whole class problem, then the support is provided to the entire class of students before we consider differentiation or individualized supports. This helps to make our decisions more efficient, effective, and equitable. Schools often make decisions about which students do and do not get support whenever large groups of students are in need of services and support, but resources are limited. In this way, class-wide intervention is equitable because all students receive support. If we think about it this way, if the majority of the class is struggling with a skill, even when we have some students who are doing okay with it, they probably still can benefit from some extra support, and it will not hurt even some of the higher performing students to participate in a class-wide intervention. So as we think about class-wide intervention, maybe we think about it with regard to math. So we could provide a class-wide intervention targeting a specific math deficit or math skill. It should occur daily for about 10 to 15 minutes until data indicate it is no longer a class-wide problem. Effective interventions are provided minimum for, ideally 5 times per week. So class-wide intervention really targets a skill that the class as a whole is experiencing difficulty with. So what is class-wide intervention? It's intervention provided to the whole class on a specific skill or specific skills that the class as an entire group are missing. The emphasis is at the class-wide level, and it is not on individual student performance. Rather, as mentioned a few minutes ago, it is on the median performance of all students in the class. So when we think about the median, and if we have 25 students in a class, the score or performance of the student who is the 13th student in that class, if we line them up or line their scores up in order of lowest to highest performance, if that median student performance is below where the class needs to be, the whole class can benefit from class-wide intervention. Why might we use class-wide intervention? There are a number of reasons that it can be utilized. It can be utilized for reading skills. It could be utilized for math skills. But what it helps us do is reduce the number of students that need additional supports outside of core instruction. So when we think about the amount of resources that schools have, and if we have more than 50% of students requiring additional supports, do school leaders have the personnel, have the materials, and have the time to provide intervention to 50% or more students? So what class-wide intervention does when provided daily, targeting those skills, is over time, it helps to reduce the number of students that would need additional supports outside of core instruction. Some of the research on class-wide intervention has indicated that there is improved performance on state assessments for students who have participated in class-wide intervention. So when we think about how class-wide intervention works, targeting skills, providing that daily intervention to all of our students in a class, over time that results in helpful gains. So there are multiple studies that have looked at this, but keep in mind that improved performance on state assessments has been indicated for students who have participated in class-wide intervention when delivered on a daily basis.
We have to consider when to use class-wide intervention. When is this important? And as illustrated before, we want to put in place class-wide intervention when 50% or more of the students in a class are performing below the expectation. Another way to say that would be when half the kids are struggling. The easiest way to provide supports is to provide supports to the entire class. Class-wide intervention should occur daily in order to maximize impact, and it will approximately last 10 to 15 minutes each day. So how do we go about doing class-wide intervention? We like to talk about active ingredients. What are the components that make instruction effective? Or what are the components in this case that would make class-wide intervention effective? One of the active ingredients is guided practice. This can be done in multiple ways, but what we need to make sure is that class-wide intervention has some level of guided practice provided to students. That could be teacher-led. That could be students working with a partner. We also want to make sure that during that 10 to 15 minutes of daily class-wide intervention, there is also time set aside for independent practice. Independent practice meaning that students are working by themselves to complete the task or work on the skill that they are practicing during class-wide. Another important aspect of class-wide intervention is feedback, specifically feedback on the independent practice. So it's not enough that students work on something during class-wide, they also need to receive immediate corrective feedback during that 10 to 15 minute period. Additionally, we want an opportunity for self-reflection. Each student should have a chance to review the feedback they've been given and reflect on their own learning. In addition, this is a group intervention. The entire class is receiving class-wide intervention, so we want to make sure that the reinforcement is provided to the entire group. It's important to reinforce for the proper behaviors and to maintain engagement in class-wide intervention. So the first couple bullet points illustrate some of those active ingredients in your 10 to 15 minute time for class-wide intervention. There's guided practice, there's independent practice, there needs to be feedback on the independent practice, there should be a chance for self-reflection on the independent practice, and there should also be a group reinforcement contingency. So there is a lot that goes on in that 10 to 15 minutes, which is wonderful because it keeps it really fast paced for students and the time flies quickly. Once you've established a good class-wide intervention routine, you can replicate that routine again and again with additional content as it comes up. But as we consider the routine for class-wide intervention as a whole, we want to make sure that there's guided practice, independent practice, feedback, self-reflection, and reinforcement. Additionally, we want to make sure that we monitor the class's progress, specifically the median score. The median score during the independent practice is going to be the measure that we use to determine Do we stick with our current class-wide intervention topic? Do we adjust instruction with our current class-wide intervention protocol? Or should we move on to a new skill? We would move on to a new skill as soon as the median has crossed that threshold that we set for their goal. What that basically means is as soon as half the kids aren't struggling anymore, it's time to move on. Remember, class-wide intervention, it was put in place because there was a whole group issue. And so class-wide intervention is trying to solve a whole group problem, which means we are going to reduce the number of students that are showing an at-risk status to under 50%. And then we can consider more customized and individualized intervention options for a smaller set of students. So our 10 to 15 minutes daily of class-wide intervention provides guided practice, independent practice, feedback, self-reflection, and reinforcement to meet the needs of the whole group. There are some important questions that we need to consider when thinking about implementing class-wide intervention. First, how will your school collect and analyze data to determine if class-wide intervention is needed? How will we know that there's a skill gap? Is there a pretest that can be given? Do we have a universal screening process in place? The point here is there needs to be a formalized assessment that we can utilize to appropriately determine whether or not students are showing an at-risk status. Additionally, we need to figure out when are we going to provide our 10 to 15 minutes of class-wide intervention. Some schools consider the use of homeroom or study halls. The thing that we would want you to consider is that class-wide intervention is a whole class problem. And so the easiest place to implement class-wide intervention is within the core content time. Once we leave the core content classroom and we use a homeroom or a study hall, we have students that may be receiving class-wide intervention from somebody other than their content focused teacher. So it can be done, but it is more effective to keep the content teacher doing the class-wide intervention for their specific class when they have them during core instruction. We also want to consider how will your school engage in the assess, analyze, interpret, instruct, reflect, and monitor process to determine when students are ready to move to the next skill for class-wide intervention. We can do this through weekly progress monitoring of the independent practice. We want to make sure that we track individual student performance so that students can meet their individual goals and they can see growth in their own learning, but we also need to make sure that we track the class median. Many times during class-wide interventions, teachers will use some sort of tool to allow students to graph or keep track in a table their individual performance. And while the teacher certainly needs access to all the student data, the teacher is primarily focused on finding the median in that data set. And remember, the class-wide intervention process is used to solve the whole group problem or to reduce the volume of students who are showing an at-risk status. So that means when the large majority of students are good or the median reaches the goal, it will be time to move on to a new skill in class-wide intervention where students showed risk. That doesn't mean that we're leaving students behind. That just means that we're ready to move on to other types of interventions and supports besides class-wide intervention. We have included some resources here that are really worth taking a look at. The National Association of School Psychologists offer guidance on class-wide intervention for mathematics and also for reading. There's also a class-wide tutoring model that's used to help build vocabulary knowledge, and 2 additional research articles that are worth the time to look at. You will find additional resources on PDE's Accelerated Learning Guide. We want to make sure that you have an opportunity to submit your attendance for this session. You can use the tiny URL at the top, tinyurl.com/PDE accelerate. Remember that that is case sensitive, so capital P, capital D, capital E, and then in lowercase accelerate. Or you can use the direct link provided. You can also use the QR code to scan and go directly to the Google form. In the Google form, you will be asked for personal information so that you can submit your attendance. Make sure to keep track of the code for this session so you can provide it on the form. The code for this session is 41256. Thank you for watching.